So let's jump straight in. These are 10 things all foreigners find surprising about Japan. Number 1, it's not all like Tokyo. So I don't know about you, but I definitely got a one-sided view of Japan from viewing it online. Before I ever went to Japan, I definitely had a specific viewpoint fed to me of Japan from YouTube videos, from online content, portraying it to be very like futuristic, modern and crazy colors, theatrical, like Dotonbori in Osaka, gaming, anime culture with the maids on the street, the maid cafes in Akihabara. And I wasn't really exposed to much of the traditional sides of Japan, which is quite unfortunate because that's the side of Japan that I loved the most and Lucas loved the most. It was definitely shocking and surprising to see that different side of Japan when I first arrived, expecting it to be a certain way, expecting it to be very theatrical and out there and colourful and otherworldly, so to speak. Not to say that there isn't that side to Japan, there definitely is. I absolutely love that side of Japan, like Akihabara and Shinjuku, Shibuya, Harajuku in particular. They're all wonderful and they're all crazy and unique and different and just as fantastical as I'd imagined. But there's also a lot more to Japan to discover than you would first realise. If you have that specific view of Japan before you go, you might be disappointed in some way or surprised in some way. It wouldn't be quite what you expect. I remember first landing in Japan and trying to find my way around and not really having pocket Wi-Fi at the time, and it looked so different to what I expected. Once I'd done all the cafe things that you can do, like Pokemon Cafe, Hedgehog cafes and maid cafes, butler cafes, like all the cafe things for some reason I was exposed to, but I didn't really see anything else. So when I got there and I'd done the cafes and there's only so much cafe things you can do before you're full. And to be honest, cafes aren't even that great where food's concerned and drinks are concerned. Like, they're very beautiful and they're very aesthetic and they're very Instagrammable, but it's definitely not the best you can get where food standard is concerned. I think a great example of this is the Vampire Cafe that we went to. That was extraordinary, like an extraordinary experience, and I definitely don't regret it, and it was one of the most memorable. But where food's concerned, it definitely wasn't highest on the list. And I think you get a certain viewpoint and a certain perspective online that isn't always 100% accurate. So I think that's one thing to be aware of, and one thing you might find shocking, that not everywhere in Japan is Tokyo. There's a lot more to see that are quite underrated actually, and that don't get the limelight on TikTok or Instagram or social media in general. I think it's similar to London in a way, where people come to England and they expect it all to be London, and it's just not. There's a lot more to see and a lot more to do, and it's not all just Buckingham Palace and Queens. So I think maybe if you're Japanese, you can let me know. Does it annoy you that like most of the limelight is shone on Tokyo and that's all people seem to really know about? Does it frustrate you sometimes if you're from a different part of Japan that people go, I know Osaka, I know Kyoto, Tokyo, like those are the 3 places that people seem to mention and we don't really hear much of anything else a lot of the time? Let me know your perspective on that. Japan can be surprisingly cheap. I know that when we went, we spent a lot of money on transportation and hotels. It was too much, if I'm honest. Like, I'm not gonna say how much, it was too much. We're both broke forever. and I think Japan gets a bad rap for where expense is concerned because that perspective on Tokyo being the capital, Tokyo can be quite expensive. In fact, it's one of the top 10 most expensive cities in the world. But I think if you can avoid all the tourist traps and if you are a little bit more savvy with your money and do a little bit of research before you go, it's actually not that bad.
How cheap is Japan for you right now?
Pretty cheap. I'm pleasantly surprised. It's like half of what I expect.
You pretty much get double what you would in Australia or more. We spend $30 here. It would be like $90 to $100 in Australia.
Not as bad as you'd expect, anyway. A lot of the times the prices seem quite reasonable out there. I think there are a lot more restaurants where I'm from, in the UK or America maybe, that are twice the price, maybe 3 times the price, especially for where sushi is concerned. So out in Japan, a lot of the food was actually really decent price-wise. You can get a lot for your money. You could basically just live off Family Mart food anyway. Let's be real. Let's be honest. I would happily live in a Family Mart out there for 3 weeks, and you could too. The quality of the food is also extraordinary from konbinis, so there is that. So it's really not as bad as you think. I also did a video recently where we tried making takoyaki for the first time. I'll put up a video somewhere around here. Yeah, we tried making takoyaki for the first time in a restaurant in England and in Nottingham, my hometown. And let's just say the price was extraordinarily different to what you would get in Japan or even Korea. I've seen videos with them making takoyaki and the price is vastly different. I think we paid around £9, maybe £9.80 from memory. I put the price up exactly how much it was, but I remember it being too much for what you get. I think in Japan you could get a lot better value. So yeah, there's definitely that. High-tech toilets. So this one, I'm assuming, I've got hair on my lips somewhere and it's really irritating me. Get off. I mean, you know, white chicks. So high-tech toilets, I'm assuming you know about these by now. I think everyone's heard of the high-tech toilets in Japan. I think it's pretty well known. They sing to, they play fancy calming waterfall soundscapes. There's loads of different buttons to press. Like when I first went to Japan, I was overwhelmed to say the least with the amount of buttons there are, like what they all do, if I was gonna get them wrong and send off an alarm. I don't know. It was just a lot to take in. So that might be shocking to you if you're not from a country like Japan. Like definitely from where I am, our toilets are just pretty ordinary, I've got to say. And they're definitely not as clean. So that was also shocking as well. So the high-tech toilets definitely make it on this list. They spray you in all areas, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you get the picture. Snazzy, futuristic, high-tech toilets are definitely one of the most surprising things I found in Japan. Train stations. So this might be a little weird for me to add to the list, but I'm going to do it anyway. They're just beautiful. All of the train stations that I saw in Japan just lit up my life. Every time I go into one, I just find something new. And obviously, if you're going into a train station, you're not there to stay, right? Like normally you're going to another destination. That's why you're there, to get from one place to the next. But every time I'd go, I'd regret not spending the whole entire day there. I would just be in awe of it all, like the amount of shops and restaurants and things to do in them. Like it was a whole freaking shopping center in there. In particular, Kyoto Station, Tokyo Station, they were just stunning. In Kyoto Station in particular, it has like a futuristic, very modern architecture to it, beautiful views, and you could look out over Tokyo skyline from rooftop Sky Garden. Literally every time I went, I just wanted more time there. And it was just one of those things where I was just dying to stay and explore more. I just don't think I've ever found that in England from where I'm from. I've never been so excited to be in a train station. I definitely allocate a little bit more time to explore them if you can. Vending machines, they're absolutely everywhere. Every corner, every street, they're just covered with them. And that's not a bad thing. That's one thing that I would love to steal actually, for the UK. Like they're just so convenient wherever you're going, wherever you're traveling. You're never gonna be thirsty, hungry. They even have like hot and cold in certain vending machines. That was something that was really, really shocking and surprising to me. Like in England, that's definitely not a thing, as far as I'm aware. Like I've never known you be able to get like a cold tea and then hot corn soup or something in the same machine. Like how structured it is, how organized with the labels, the different red and blue, I think it's red and blue labels. I just thought that was really, really cool. Like the amount of options that you get and the sheer variety and the sheer amount of vending machines on all the streets was astounding to me. So that might be something that might shock you when you first go to Japan. And let me know if you're from Japan. Is it weird when you go to different countries where there aren't any? Like, are you disappointed? I don't know about any other country that has that amount of vending machines available. And there are definitely some interesting vending machines. Out there with surprising things, surprising contents, shall we say. So yeah, something to look out for. There's a whole street of vending machines somewhere where you can get so many different things. I've seen quite a few videos on that, so check it out. I think that's definitely somewhere that I'd like to check out next time I go to Japan. Starbucks. So all the Starbucks, again, it might be a little weird for me to add this to the list, but it was really shocking to me how beautiful the Starbucks were. Okay, if you're Japanese, is this odd that I'm so in love with them? Starbucks daisuki. They were just so stunning. They were so huge. In comparison to the ones I've known this whole time, they're just quite ordinary. Like, I do love Starbucks, but inside and out is just vastly, vastly different to the UK, where I'm from. They're overcrowded, you can never find a seat, they're really loud, like everyone's really, like there's tons of students in there, like really rowdy, like on the phone calls. The service is, bit meh, like mama des. I've had it a few times where I've asked for a coffee and they put it in a takeaway cup, and I've been so like confused by it. Like, I'm sitting in and I made it clear that I'm sitting in, and yet they refuse to give me a sitting in cup, like an actual mug. They always try to get me to have a takeaway cup, and it just doesn't taste the same. Like, it's really disappointing, that kind of service. I leave feeling guilty, like it's my fault, like I'm being a burden on them in some way, somehow. They even try and lie a lot and say, oh, we've run out of mugs, and then 2 seconds later they pull out a mug and like, oh, I've just found one out of nowhere. I'm like, why is it so difficult? Like, it's 12 o'clock, like, you don't close. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you don't close right now. See, I couldn't understand if they were packing things away and they wanted to reserve certain cups and just give takeout cups for that reason, but it's never like that. I always go earlier, so for me it doesn't make sense. But that doesn't happen in Japan. Like, the service is so good. They're so efficient and they're so lovely to you. Customer service is really, really high quality in Japan, and that's very important to them. And I really respect that, and I appreciated it a lot. The variety again they have in Japan, like it tasted like it looked like patisserie artisan cakes that they were making, like sakura flavors and things. Like, we just get biscuits and flapjacks and little brownie bars or something, I don't know. But in Japan the cakes were just, it was like a proper cake shop, all in a Starbucks, and I'd never seen that before. So that is one thing that I was really surprised with, and I think you will be too if you've never seen the Starbucks in Japan. Sounds. So I've mentioned this in another video, in another recent video, but the sounds in Japan, they're everywhere. The soundscapes, whether you cross the road, in the toilets there's sounds, there's in the train stations they play bird noises. I think that's to help with special needs or sight impaired, can you say? Blind people, I think it really helps them.
And there's these buttons on the side, and when you push them in different languages, it will tell you about the train station and give you an auditory description of where to go.
It's just a really nice touch that we don't really have that much in the UK. I know we do have like certain sounds when you cross the road sometimes, I think, but it's just not the same. In Japan there's so many different levels to it. Everywhere you go there's like a new little sound that you'll find. It's subtle, but it's important enough for me to add to this list, so just don't question it, okay? You won't eat sushi, trust me. Or soy sauce for that matter. This is definitely something that I find shocking. I expected to eat sushi every day in Japan. As far as I was aware, that's all Japanese people eat, right? I know it's very stereotypical, but that's the narrative that I was fed, that Japanese people eat sushi every day, every day, and that's all they eat is sushi and fish and rice. But when I was over there, I barely ever ate sushi. I had onigiris a lot from the konbinis. Ramen I tried a lot. I ate a lot of pork cutlet sandos, I gotta admit. But sushi was not high up on the list. I wanted to try sushi, like higher end sushi. We were running out of money, so we felt too guilty to try it. Like, you know, you have the counter and you sit in front of the person serving it, actually like preparing it fresh in front of you. I would have loved to try that experience, but sadly we didn't get to, and that's the surprising thing. Like, I really thought we would have sushi, but we tried the kura sushi, the conveyor type, and that was lovely. But again, it definitely wasn't my absolute ultimate favorite thing we tried in Japan. So there's definitely a lot more to Japanese cuisine. To think of Japanese food as just sushi is so inaccurate. There's so much more, especially like kaisendon bowls, like they were amazing. And soy sauce. Here in England, sushi and soy sauce will be in every Japanese restaurant. But in Japan, I don't think I had it once. Probably maybe just at the kura sushi. Seasonal flavors. So Japan are really good at seasonal flavors. They have like a lot of limited edition things that only come out at certain seasons. Springtime, sakura season, you have sakura flavored things everywhere, and I just love that. And the aesthetic of it is so pretty, so pink and beautiful. Autumn time, you'll get all these cozy, warm, filling flavors like the chestnut, yakimo, sweet potato, kabocha pumpkin. Like, there's so many different types of seasonal flavors, and we don't really do that much in England. We don't really prioritize seasons. Like, it's normally kind of set, but in Japan you'll get lots of different things. And I've heard other creators on YouTube talk about and mention the fact that they can't get that flavor anymore, and it's changing to something else. And I found that really interesting. That was really shocking to me and really surprising, but in a good way. It makes it exciting, and you're going to look forward to the next season that's going to come, and you never quite know what you're going to get. It's quite spontaneous, and I really like that. Or if you have a certain flavor that you love, that you can look forward to the same season each year if they do a particular thing. I don't know how much they rotate it and how much they change it, but I definitely love that idea. The biggest seasonal change we have here in the UK is like pumpkin spice latte. That's like the only seasonal change that I'm aware of. And even that, I've never really tried it. It's just kind of like a cheesy thing that you see on Instagram. That's the only thing I can think of. Japanese flavors are just so good. They're never overly sugary and they prioritize the different flavors, and that's something I really enjoy, and I think you will too. Last but not least, more English than expected. So I know if you're going to Japan for the first time, you might be a little worried that many people in Japan don't speak good English, and a lot of Japanese people tend to tell me that they don't speak good English. When I was out there, they made a point of saying, I can't speak English, I'm sorry. But then they would come out with a clear, perfect sentence in English that me and Lucas understood. They speak better English than we do. So I think they're being really modest when they say that. I think there is a lot of more access to English, maybe now than in the past. I think mostly you're fine, especially in places like Tokyo, the capital. You're going to get a lot of people who can speak a little bit of English, and there's definitely ways around it as well. There's definitely a lot of places that do English menus. There were places, I think we went to in izakaya once, that didn't do an English menu. It was quite confusing at first. I thought, how are we going to get around this? But then there's always things like translators, and we had like a picture translator that we used. It's not going to be 100% accurate. It's something that you can easily navigate around. It's not the end of the world. So I definitely think there is a lot more English in Japan than you might expect. I definitely thought it was just going to be English speaking in Tokyo and nowhere else, but I don't think that's the case. I think quite a few people in Japan actually spoke pretty good English. You might find that quite surprising. Okay, that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know what things that you find most surprising about Japan when you went. Mite kurete arigato. Bye bye. My camera's about to die.